Welcome to Dementia-Friendly Prince George's County, Maryland Northern Sector webinar series for caregivers. Today's topic is Laughing to Keep from Crying. This Alzheimer's thing is no joke, a caregiver's journey. Sponsored by Prince George's County Government and the Department of Family Services.
I was my mother's caregiver, and the journey was quite an experience. Laughing to keep from crying, this Alzheimer's thing is no joke, is not only my story, it offers lessons that I learned throughout my journey and provides resources to help other caregivers. My desire is to help caregivers navigate through their journey as well as educate others about this devastating disease. This is my mom, Mary Louise Morgan, an amazing woman, loving, always helping others, funny, an entrepreneur, humble, easy to talk to, and so much more. Alzheimer's changed this mild-mannered, caring woman into somebody we didn't know, a drama queen. During my time with you, I'm going to go through this list of topics: doctors, behavior issues, finances, and others, and talk to you about some of the challenges I face and provide tips that I learned that may help you through your journey. In 1999, I started getting calls from my aunt telling me that something was wrong with my mother and I needed to come see about her. At the time, I wasn't working and I had two small children that were in school. In addition to that, my mother lived in Darlington, South Carolina, and I lived here in Maryland. But God, he worked everything out, and my brother and I was able to travel to South Carolina to check on what my aunt's concerns were. I had no idea that those calls were the beginning of my caregiver's journey. Once my brother and I arrived, it was evident that what my aunt was talking about was correct. As we started talking to my mother, she continued to repeat herself over and over again, and she would constantly ask us the same questions over and over again, and that was unlike her. My mother was a very organized person. The house was in a condition that it normally was not, and her appearance was disheveled. Her hair was a mess, and her clothes were also. I confronted her with my aunt's calls, and she immediately denied that anything was wrong and that my aunt did not know what she was talking about and she needed to mind her business. I questioned her as to why she stopped going to church because she brushed it off. And she just said she wasn't feeling well. My mother was a person who rarely missed church. She was an usher and involved in most activities at her church. According to my aunt, she hadn't been there in over a month. Well, after multiple trips to visit her, much prayer, and asking God for direction, we discussed a number of options and concluded. She took care of us. Now it was our turn to take care of her. And also, she could no longer live by herself after some of the observations that we saw. And she was not getting the proper care in Darlington, and I was not happy with the doctors that she was going to. So here are some tips. Answer the call. Her bizarre behavior prompted my aunt to call me. If something isn't right, you need to check it out. And lastly, do not ignore the signs. Now let's talk about this doctor in South Carolina. And here are some things that you need to consider. My mother wasn't diagnosed with Alzheimer's until she got to Maryland. Her doctor in Darlington was horrible, dismissive, he was rude, misdiagnosis, uncaring, untruthful, giving her medicines for illnesses she didn't even have. I noticed that she had several medicine bottles on a table during one of my visits, and I questioned her about them. She got agitated with me and did not want to talk about it. But then she said she was going there taking these medicines because the doctor told her to. There were 7 medications with multiple refills, such as 7 to 12 refills at one time. And to me, that was odd. So I decided I was going to one of her appointments. That was while I was there. She didn't want me to go, but I needed to find out What was the change in her behavior, her forgetfulness, and why was she so confused? She then said that the only thing the nurses did was take her blood pressure, check her vital signs, give her prescriptions, and the appointment was over. And she further told me that the doctor rarely saw her, and when he didn't even examine her, that he just gave her more medicine. Well, after talking to this doctor and seeing that he really didn't care a hoot about my mother, we left, and I told her never to go there again, and that if they call her, that she was to let me know. Well, they called her several times trying to get her to come back to the office, and they would not call me. So what I did, I called them, and after my second conversation with them, they never called her back. Here's some other tips. If it doesn't sound right, don't accept it. When you know that something is not right with your loved one and the doctor's telling you that this is part of the normal aging process, don't accept that answer. Keep pushing the issue until you get your loved one tested and evaluated and that you get the help that you both need. My next challenge, moving my mom to Maryland. The day of the move, we did everything possible to get her dressed. I think she sensed that she knew what was up. She was not getting dressed, and she made it very clear to us. Granted, she left South Carolina at an early age, eventually moved to Maryland, met her husband, had 2 children, lived in the DC, Maryland area for over 30 years, and in 1984, she and her husband moved back to South Carolina to a home that she had inherited, and they planned to live there for the rest of their lives. Unfortunately, my father died suddenly. She had to get it together, which she did, and she stayed busy. In her mind, she was content. But guess what? I had to do something. That day, we had to trick her. She wasn't happy to find herself in Maryland and after being told that we were going out to get something to eat. She said that she needed to go home, that she had things to do, and she had no idea why she was stuck in Maryland. There will be times that you may have to do or say things that is not true. I had to say, Lord, please forgive me. Now let's talk about the next doctor, the reasonable doctor. And these are some things you need to consider. We are now in Maryland. Since I did not know what was wrong with my mother, I had to find a doctor to tell me. A friend of mine had told me about this doctor who was great with the elderly. So I wanted to check him out. So I made an appointment for my mother. He put her through every test you could imagine until he found an illness for her. He indicated that she had dementia, possibly Alzheimer's. I had no idea what Alzheimer's was. I had never heard of it. I was clueless. He explained in detail what her condition was, what was going on with her, and what to expect. He treated her with respect, listened to her and me. He took his time, never trying to hurry us out of the office. He was approachable and had no problems with me calling him when I was at my wit's end. He actually became a family doctor. I go to him today, and so do my children. He also sent her to a neurologist. The first one, I didn't like his approach, so I asked for another one. And the second one was great. Here are some tips. You want a doctor who cares, is knowledgeable, supportive, and a good listener. One that is mindful of your loved one's behavior and knows how to adjust accordingly. You also want to observe the interaction between your loved one and the doctor. Does that doctor listen to your concerns? And lastly, don't be afraid to get a second or third opinion. Alzheimer's was foreign to me. I could not imagine my mother, of all people, having this disease. She was healthy, no diabetes, no high blood pressure, no heart problems. How did she get this disease? So I started my research into what Alzheimer's and dementia was. I did not know what I was getting myself into, but I knew I had to take care of my mom. Tips. You are your loved one's biggest advocate. Ask questions, do your research, get other opinions. Your loved ones need you to fight for them. because they think they're just fine. And you're crazy, as my mother would often tell me. Next slide. Now, there will be a lot of times you have a lot of questions as you're going through your journey. And here are several of them that I had to encounter. My journey consisted of a number of challenges. Not only the move to Maryland, but where in my house was she going to lay her head at night? I had to redesign my house to include a bedroom and a full bath on the first floor. Lord, where is this money coming from? I didn't have a full-time job when I started my caregiver journey, but God had already worked everything out. I just didn't know it. He blessed me with a full-time job by the time we moved my mother to Maryland. Now, the children have to go to school. What do I do with her while no one's home? I thought she'd be okay at home by herself while I was at work and the children at school. I was wrong. I quickly was introduced to the wandering phase of Alzheimer's. I quickly realized that leaving her home alone was not a good idea. I called her every day on the hour while I was at work to make sure she was okay. But there was one day I couldn't reach her. So I had to sneak off from work. I borrowed the company van without telling anybody, and I rushed home. She was in the yard, and my neighbors had distracted her in hopes that someone would come home soon. After reminding her about going outside, her response let me know that she could not be left alone again, and I had to make a decision. Adult daycare center, here we come. She had made it clear that she was not going to any daycare place and that she was going home back to Darlington and she was never coming back here again. As a caregiver, I had to do what was best for both of us. I had to put the padlock on the door and while I was at work until I found the center. My search was aggressive. I felt uncomfortable locking her in the house, but I was not comfortable with leaving the padlock off because I did not know when she would leave again, and I may not find her ever again. The adult daycare center was a blessing. It saved me in so many ways. I did not have to worry about my mother during the day. They picked her up before I went to work, and they brought her home after I got home. They provided her breakfast, lunch, and snacks. They had a calendar for each month, which laid out the daily activities. These activities included senior outings and numerous activities that also included the family. My mother enjoyed going and would sometimes remember that she had went. And the times when she didn't, she would just say, "Oh, I didn't go anywhere today. I just sat here all day long," and then she would just start singing. Here are your tips. What is your plan? Will your loved one will live with you? Are they able to stay by themselves while you work? Research your options. Adult daycare, long-term care facilities, home health care. Have a discussion with your family. If you need to make a change to your decision, it's okay. Your focus is you and your loved one. It may get overwhelming for you, especially if you are taking care of your loved one at home and their behavior or other care gets too much for you. Don't feel guilty about whatever your decision is, and don't let anyone make you feel guilty. Now you're going to have some unexpected things that surface. This is one that happened to me, finances. That was a challenge for me. And this can happen to any of us. You need to make sure you have the proper documents. And here on this slide shows you some of the documents that you will need. Medical insurance, life insurance, find out about these things. Bank account information, Social Security pensions if they have that. Will, power of attorney, etc. When I realized that my caregiver journey was about to begin, it hit me that I not only was taking care of her, but I also was taking care of finances as well. I did not know what that meant. There was no mortgage on our house, and she made sure my name was on the bank account after my father had died. I did not know the unknowns. The next several years revealed a number of challenges, and I did not know what was going to happen. Let's start. After the move, we continued to travel to South Carolina every year for 7 years, at least 3 to 4 times a year. These trips cost gas, food, and other incidentals and expense. I transferred her bills and mail to my house prior to moving her to Maryland to ensure that the bills were paid. Then between the visits and getting the mail, I found out that her utility bills were overdue, and she was being sued by a security systems company. The overdue utility bills, no big deal, minor issue. The security system company matter was different. The security company was suing her because the year prior to my moving my mom to Maryland, her oldest sister felt that she needed a security alarm system since she was living alone. Now, we are not sure why my aunt suddenly felt her sister needed this alarm system. My mother had been living alone since my father died in 1985, 14 years. Well, my aunt paid the first month, and after that, it was on my mother. The problem was my mother did not know how to work the system. It was annoying to her, and she never paid the bill for nearly a year. Henceforth, the company sued her for over $2,000. Fast forward, my brother went to court with her, and after the judge asked my mother several questions and evaluated her state of mind, he agreed with my brother that she did not know what she was signing. However, the contract was binding. The judge told my brother he could pay the bill any way he saw fit. Well, my brother got creative. Next, her homeowner's insurance lapsed nearly a year ago. God kept her. When I contacted the insurance company, they stated that we needed to get another policy and an insurance representative had to come out to inspect the house. The problem was no one was living in the house, another unexpected issue. Next, life insurance policies were found during our visits. I found a bill which indicated that she had taken out a loan on one of her insurance policies. I contacted the company. Luckily, we had the financial power of attorney because they were reluctant to talk to me initially. Another unexpected bill. There was a 20-year-old plumbing problem underneath my mother's home. I do not have the time to explain what went on with that. The details are in my book. Trust me, God is still in the miracle working business. Next, I was optimistic that I could handle her financial matters with my income. I would pay her bills and mine with no problem. I would save her money in the event of major issues such as that plumbing problem underneath our house. I quickly found out I couldn't do both. I struggled with this because I felt I was supposed to take care of everything by myself, including her finances. Well, with 2 active children, a mortgage, food, and other bills, I just couldn't do it. I prayed and asked God if it was okay for me to use her funds to help pay her bills. The answer was almost immediate. That's her house. Be a good steward of her funds. So I started paying her bills out of her monthly check and sent her tithes to her church in South Carolina every month. Every year for 7 years, I developed a folder and put the utility bills, insurance payments, and any other bills that I paid in a folder and annotated the date the bills were paid. I had a record of where her money was going. If anyone ever questioned how her funds were spent, I could easily show them because I had proof. During another visit, I found her will, which prompted us to get the medical and financial power of attorney. The attorney spoke to us first and then needed to speak to my mother alone. My brother and I were a bit nervous because we did not know which Mary Morgan she was going to get. The power of prayer. She was in a good state of mind that day and agreed to the power of attorney. Here's some tips. Be a good steward of your loved one's money. The money is not yours to do whatever. It's there to take care of their needs. Keep good records of where and how the money is spent. Use a spreadsheet, folders, whatever is necessary. If you are ever challenged, you have the records. Money management is important. Keep your funds and theirs separate. Do not commingle their funds with yours. Also, this is vital, get the legal documents in place. The will, the financial, medical power of attorneys, etc. You will need those. My next slide is behavior issues. It's not clicking over. Other challenge was her behavior challenges. Everyone doesn't go through this. This Miss Morgan, we didn't know. The cursing, temper tantrums, crying spells, the pouting, the screaming. This is a caregiver's nightmare. Bringing her car to Maryland was a huge mistake. It got so bad one evening, I told my children to put their coat on and let's go outside. It was wintertime. And it was cold. We walked around the house for 7 times. I was praying to God to give me guidance about the car and to calm her down. I was praying and saying, I cannot do this alone. I was praying like Joshua did when they walked around Jericho and the walls came tumbling down. I didn't want that to happen to my house. I just wanted peace. My children thought I was crazy, but they did what I said just for support. Can't get my other slide, but it's okay. My mother started cursing, and this was a shock. Throughout my many years of existence on this earth, I had never ever heard her curse, not once. She used words I will not repeat. I didn't hear you. I am, but it's not working. Okay, say that again. Okay. Okay, there it is. Sorry about that. Okay. My mother started cursing, as I was saying, and we didn't know where those words were coming from. The first time she blurted out those words, it caught me off guard, and I thought I was mistaken, that I did not actually hear what she said. But then reality set in, and she said it again, so I was suddenly speechless. After calling my brother and telling him what happened, he thought I was joking, but then he realized I was serious. And then we asked ourselves, beginning that she was an adult, where did she learn this language? It was as if we were her parent discussing a child who used profanity for the first time. After some research, we learned that this sort of behavior is part of the disease at work. And that personality and behavior, good or bad, can be altered at a moment's notice. This new form of behavior, cursing, I had to accept. Her behavior gradually escalated to fighting. During those times, I learned how to duck. Eventually, I got good at it. However, there were times where I was not fast enough, and she was quick. My mother didn't curse or fight until she got Alzheimer's. She didn't even raise her voice. Before the disease, when she got angry, she simply gave us the silent treatment for days. I did not know this woman. She was not the woman who raised me, yet she was. Here's an example. My mother went with me practically everywhere. I was a member of a outreach ministry at the church that I was going through, and we occasionally visited a senior citizens facility. On one particular outreach, I took her with me thinking this would be great for her. She can relate. She goes to the adult daycare center. For the first 15 minutes, everything was fine. Then all of a sudden, she flipped on me and started yelling that she wanted to go home and she did not want to be there. She was getting louder and louder. I apologized to the group and quickly left. When we got to my car and I opened the passenger side to lift her out of the wheelchair, which she was in at the time, she started hitting me and pushing at the door. At that time, my mother was 20 to 30 pounds heavier than me. It took me 15 to 20 minutes to get her in that car. All the while she was hitting and kicking me, she continued to prevent me from closing the car door. She was yelling and screaming at me and calling her deceased mother to save her. I thought to myself, I'm being beat up by an 80-year-old elderly woman. All of this time, it was in a public parking lot. I had to say, God, I simply do not have the strength to take this anymore. I continued to ask him to calm her down, and finally he gave me the strength to get her legs in the car, close, and lock the door. You can imagine, I was angry. I was perspiring. Then I looked over to the left, and a middle-aged woman sat in her car and saw the entire ordeal. Now I was also humiliated. That was another example. Next, we have sundown syndrome. I had to be at work at 6:30 a.m. My mother chose that when she didn't realize it, she started talking, singing, humming, praying, talking to her deceased mama, her daddy, her siblings, and her husband, my father, all night long. This is another thing that happened. Her hormones kicked in. I didn't write about this in my book because I wasn't sure who was going to read it. The moaning started. I'm like, oh my gosh. I would say, Mom, please, what are you doing? She said, leave me alone. I'm not bothering you. I'm like, really? I do not want to hear you and your invisible husband. This continued to around 3:00 a.m. in the morning, 2 hours before we both had to get up. I had to get up to get myself ready for work and also get her ready to be picked up by the driver to go to the adult daycare. Imagine, I was on a roller coaster ride for 7 years, not knowing what to expect next. I could not have done this without God and the support of my brother and children. Working a full-time job and coming home with dealing with her, honestly, I was stressed out and exhausted. I struggled with putting her in a nursing home. However, I quickly reminded myself of my commitment to take care of her. I also want to quickly say that was my decision. That was how I felt. Everyone is different. You have to do what is best for you and your loved one. And again, do not feel guilty. Things to keep your loved one engaged. Dolls, books, puzzles, you name it. The mood swings can come at a moment's notice. I had to learn how to handle those unexpected mood swings. One thing that helped me at times was my daughter's dolls, Addie at top, and Susie, aka Belinda and Maria. My mother kept changing Susie's name. My mother was a daycare provider. She loved children, and the children, their parents loved her. My daughter had several dolls, and one day when my mother was in rare form, one of the dolls was near her. She spotted that doll and started talking to it. Her behavior changed immediately. So we picked up on the transformation. We made sure that when she started getting agitated, we would have one of the dolls in the room. I took dolls with me to church and other outings because I wasn't sure when her mood swings would change. My mother also loved to eat. I also made sure I had snacks that she liked to munch on when we were out and about. I had to learn what she enjoyed that would calm her down. Sometimes it was books. Even though the book may be upside down, she would pretend she was reading, turn the pages, and that was okay. Music was another thing that can work. Learn to go with the flow. Learn not to challenge. I had to learn not to challenge her when she kept repeating herself and saying things that didn't make sense or said things that hurt my feelings. I had to understand that that was the disease. Even though she was changing, she couldn't help it. So I had to adjust to her world. I had to constantly remind myself that my mother's behavior and mood swings were the cause by the disease. And just as Jesus said on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. My mother did not know what she was doing from one second to the next. Tips. So whatever works, we have music, books, folding clothes, doing simple chores around the house, dolls, puzzles. Use those things to help. Think about things that they did in the past. They may help you. My mother was a seamstress. A friend of hers told me one day when she noticed her um, doing something with her hands, she said, "You know, your mother's sewing." No clue. So learn those things. Stay calm and also be consoling. This can also help. Another thing, open communication is key. Be honest with yourself as well as your family, siblings, doctors, even your job. I was upfront with my supervisors and my coworkers. I am a caregiver, taking care of my mother, and she is my priority. There was a situation where my mother literally stopped walking, talking, and eating. She ended up in the hospital. I had to adjust. When she came out of the hospital, she could not go back to the adult daycare center at that time. I had to be home. My supervisor allowed me to work from home until the doctor cleared my mother to go back to the center. Cherish those moments. Laughter is good for the soul. I also learned how to laugh through all the drama. My mother was a comedian even though she didn't know it. Her behavior and mood swings were unpredictable. I learned how to embrace the funny things that she did and keep those moments in my spirit when she was fighting and yelling at me. There was one particular evening, I was getting her prepared for bed. While my mother and I were in the bathroom, she was yelling and fighting me. Between my weaving and bobbing her swings, I did get her dressed for bed. Once I eased her into the bed, all of a sudden, she started singing Nearer My God to Thee. My mother had a high-pitched voice, almost ear-piercing. Her ability to shift her tone of voice from low octave to high octave and back and forth was simply amazing. Funny thing, she had never sang in a choir. My daughter was on the phone and her friend had asked her, "Who in the world is that singing?" My mother was extremely loud. And in between the words, she would just bust out in laughter and then she'd just start singing again. She did this rendition for about 30 minutes. It was so hilarious. I actually recorded it and shared it with our family members. Again, laughter is good for the soul. Your loved one will do and say things that is really funny. Remember, laugh with them, not at them. Take care of yourself. That is crucial. Caregivers, please take care of yourself. I literally did not sleep for 7 years due to my mother's illness, which included her wandering and sundown syndrome. I honestly was not taking care of myself. I was so focused on taking care of her, I ignored my own health. I was afraid that my mother would go off on someone who did not know how to handle her, that I would not leave her with anyone outside the family. That was a huge mistake. Again, take care of yourself, and that includes eating properly, doing physical and mental exercises, sleep and rest, staying active, and engaging in things that you enjoy. Also, get help. Caregivers tend to think we have to do everything and no one can care take care of our loved ones better than us. You are going to need help. You need a break. You need guidance. You need someone to talk to. Your support may be your family, your friends, your doctor, your church. Join a support group. Welcome the help. There are programs and organizations available, such as the Mentor Friendly America, Alzheimer's Association, who will assist you. Reach out to your local government, the Department of Family Services, Aging Division, to see what programs are available to you, such as the respite program. Don't do what I did. All of this was new to me. I did not know anyone who dealt with Alzheimer's at the time, and I wasn't sure who to turn to. So, in other words, I was winging it for 7 years. Next, children. Lastly, children also are affected by this disease. Children deal with Alzheimer's differently than adults. They have questions. So these questions arise when they notice their loved ones are different and their behavior changes and it's unfamiliar with them. Like in my children, these are my children, this is their grandmother. My children had a difficult time trying to understand this new grandmother. This was not the grandmother who was taking care of them all those times when they were going to visit her in the summer, because they stayed with her in the summertime. There is a section called From the Mouths of Babes in my book where my children offer their perspective on how they felt and dealt with this new grandmother. Tips: talk to your children and grandchildren about what's going on with their loved one. Keep them engaged and be honest with them. And also talk to them about ways that they can help. My children, they laughed with her, they read with her, they showed pictures of when they were younger. So they learned how to deal with her. This is our family. This is my mom. Her favorite pastime was eating. This is one of them. Her babies. And this was when she was at the adult daycare center, and that was one of the workers. And this is a hat that she made at the center. In closing, as a caregiver, you are helping your loved one with daily care. Your typical duties for a caregiver may be managing medications, taking them to their medical and other appointments, talking to doctors and nurses on their behalf, helping to bathe and dress them, and take care of household chores, preparing meals, managing or paying their bills when they can't do it anymore, and a whole lot more. Caregivers have to learn to cope with a number of emotional cycles, and it's hard, yet it is rewarding. You are special, and everyone cannot be a caregiver. God chose you. Throughout my journey, I made a lot of mistakes. I felt guilty when things did not go the way I thought they were supposed to go. So I am here to tell you, don't be like me, thinking that you can do it all by yourself, being afraid to reach out to others because they do not understand or will not be able to handle your loved one if he or she gets out of hand and curse you out. My mother only cursed me and sometimes my children out, not others. I was often told how much of a joy she was to be around. She was a beautiful lady and a sweetheart, and I knew that. I always would hear that, and I was appreciative of that. My mom was a blessing to our family and to so many others. Through it all, I learned to trust God in every step of the way. This book took me 9 years to write after my mother's passing because it brought situations that were extremely difficult for me to deal with. God had other plans and would not let me rest until this book was done. He's also funny. Since caring for my mom, I have been a caregiver for my godmother, an ex-mother-in-law, and an uncle. How funny is that? Each time I learned something new, and guess what? I survived. I'm still here. As a result of this, my book was turned into a play and was performed in 2019 at several locations in the Maryland area. And now I'm working on a children's book about my children. They're helping me. And it's their experience and their experience. And the children's experience in hoping to help young children and their parents as they go through caring for their loved one. This is my information, my email address, website, and phone number. And copies of the book are available on Amazon and also directly from me on an autographed copy. And my other commitment is a portion of all proceeds from any book I sell is donated to help find a cure for this disease. I want to thank Dementia Friendly America for this opportunity, and I thank each and every one of you for listening to me. Have a blessed day and be encouraged. Thank you.